Senator Reynolds.
Much, Mr Acting Deputy President. I too rise to speak on this matter of public importance. Australia is a proud sporting nation, and integrity and honesty are critically important attributes. From the grassroots local clubs through to our nation's largest sporting teams, both professional and community. All of our sporting teams, no matter the level, must maintain the highest reputation possible both domestically and on the international stage. We are not a country that tolerates cheats. In Australia, integrity isn't just something that's codified in sporting codes or in legislation. It is in the fibre of our very being. As I said, we are not a nation that tolerates cheats, and those who are need to be called out and dealt with harshly. It is a betrayal of all Australians. Athletes who represent their communities, their states and our nation have a responsibility to live up to the highest possible standards, be they, as I said, in codes or not. It is all about integrity and also transparency. Sometimes I think in large sports, of which Cricket Australia is one, in large professional sports, they become a business, and they forget that they are actually custodians of the sport for their members and for all of their supporters and, of course, for their players. Sporting organisations are run as companies, quite rightly, but sometimes they do lose focus and do forget whom they are there to represent, the purpose that they exist for. Cricket Australia appoints their skipper to lead by example, ensuring not only that the rules and standards are maintained, but also that the game itself is played in accordance with the spirit of cricket, with integrity, with freedom from cheating and freedom from corruption. Whether it be Cricket Australia or Rugby Australia, these organisations both have responsibilities to their members, to the Australian public and to us all. And reading about the Cricket Australia scandal and the cheating over the last 48 hours has reminded me of an inquiry I established last year with the support of those in this chamber into rugby union. I did so because I believe that Western Force supporters deserve to know why their beloved team was so brutally culled. Integrity was hard to see, and Western Force players and supporters felt cheated by those who were there designed to look after their best interests, and certainly accountability was almost invisible. Just because you can do something in big sport doesn't mean and never means that you should. Clearly, in the case of rugby union, this was a textbook case of a national sporting organisation losing sight of the obligations they have as custodians of the sport. The 8,000-strong crowd that assembled in Perth in August last year demonstrated very clearly that the WA rugby community was deserved an answer. They deserved transparency, and they deserved to know where the integrity was in that decision. Their pain and despair was exacerbated by the failure of the then Australian Rugby Union to even come and address them and provide answers, to provide transparency, to be honest, and to demonstrate that this wasn't in effect cheating on behalf of another team. I promised at that rally to find answers for supporters, for players and for their families, and to call that sporting body to account. But also, importantly, for federal taxpayers who fund the sport through the Australian Sports Commission, and for West Australian taxpayers who, in good faith, invested well over $100 million in infrastructure. They had every right to feel that they had been cheated, and they certainly saw no integrity and no transparency in the process. I was personally very disappointed with the custodians of this support and the fact that they had failed to see this inquiry as a way of fully and transparently and honestly explaining the circumstances that led to the decision to cull Western Force and save the Melbourne Rebels. It was very clear that the ARU representatives were contemptuous of those in this place and our role in seeking answers. They were resentful. These captains and titans of industry were resentful to have to account for their activities. I also believe, as I've said previously in this place, that there was highly inappropriate and misdirected attempts by ARU officials to stop and to impede this inquiry. For me, one of the greatest tragedies in this sad tale of ARU stewardship is that since 2008, at least 13 reviews were conducted into this sport, into grassroots engagement and into governance transparency. But sadly, after 13 reviews in less than 10 years, nothing was actioned, nothing was changed, and the sport kept going backwards. The committee made very strong recommendations to the Commonwealth Government, to the WA State Government and also to ASIC, which I understand is still inquiring into the matters that were raised in this inquiry. Having strong and sustainable and community-focused sporting teams is unquestionably in the national interest. Therefore, it's been only sensible that the Commonwealth Government review world's best practice funding and performance measures to strengthen performance across our national sporting landscape. I'm also pleased that the Commonwealth Government is, independent of this inquiry, finalising a review of Australia's sport integrity arrangements as part of the development of the National Sporting Plan. Clearly, the events over the last couple of days with Cricket Australia and one of the most offensive and gross breaches of trust and honesty and cheating that has occurred for many years, not just in that sport but I think across all major sports, is something now that the government and the minister and this inquiry need to look at further. As the sports integrity threat environment continues to change rapidly, all stakeholders across government and sport need to work together to ensure Australia's sport integrity arrangements remain effective and also remain contemporary. Sport is an integral part of Australia's identity, bringing with it physical, social, cultural and economic benefits. Sport unites communities and is a driver for inclusion and social cohesion. Sport plays an important role across all Australian communities, from the cities to rural and regional centres, from grassroots local clubs right up to the elite sport level. It is essential that the integrity of all sports, large and small in this country, are not only living up to the letter of the law, but they are doing it with great transparency, with great integrity, free of cheating and corruption. Now, the review I mentioned was conducted by an independent panel led by the Honourable James Wood QC and supported by a highly eminent panel. The review represents the most comprehensive examination of Australian sports integrity arrangements that have ever been undertaken, and they make 52 recommendations in line with its terms of reference. In light of what's happened with Cricket Australia and their almost inconceivable breakdown of ethics, of process, of integrity, this inquiry could not be better timed. But I would ask that the Minister and the inquiry go back and have a look at the implications of what has come out and how this could possibly have happened in one of Australia's most beloved sporting traditions. So I very much look forward to seeing the government's response to this review and, importantly, the impact it will have on ensuring Australian sporting teams remain amongst the world's best and that they do it with integrity and free of the stain of cheating. Our sportsmen and our sportswomen, as politicians and other community leaders, are required to follow not only the codes of conduct, but they are there to lead by example and set standards we can all be proud of. As I've said throughout the inquiry into rugby union last year, just because legally you can do something, it doesn't mean you should ever do it. And particularly when you are the custodian and you are the stewards of a great sporting tradition, sporting codes. All custodians are not just there to run a business. They are there to maintain national sports that millions of Australians love, participate in and feel very proud of. So I commend the government for this review, and I hope that whatever catastrophic failures of culture, process, plans and attitude in Cricket Australia cannot and do not happen again in any sporting code. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Reynolds. Senator White.